Welcome back to another episode of the Glue Guy, and today we have the Glue Guy exclusive preseason college football top 25. We're almost in August. That's when the college football season starts, and there's been a lot of talk recently from other big outlets like ESPN and Fox Sports, CBS, Sports Illustrated, of what their preseason top 25 is. You know, who to look forward to, who they think are dark horses coming into the college football playoff for next season. So I just thought this would be a perfect time for me to release my preseason top 25. We're going to start from 25th all the way up to 1st. And let me know if you guys disagree or agree with my rankings, who I put first, who I put 5th. You know, if there's some crazy picks that you think that I've made or spots where they are, where certain teams are, let me know. But this is going to be fun. And so let's start off with number 25, and that is out of the SEC, I have the Texas A&M Aggies. It was really an up and down season last year for them. They had a lot of good highs, and they were really in a position in the SEC come the end of the year to control their own destiny in terms of making it to that SEC championship game. Of course, they didn't make it to that game. They didn't end up making the playoff like I believe a lot of people in Aggieville thought they would. They started off the season with Connor Weigman as their quarterback and then made the switch to Marcel Reed, and I think they had more success with him, and now he's back to lead the Aggies again next season, and I have them in as number 25. Number 24 out of the ACC, I have Louisville. Obviously, no more Tyler Shuck as their quarterback, but they've been consistently over the past few years a good program in the ACC. This is not a team that I think really will make the college football playoff or really come close into it, and I can easily see them falling out of the top 25 a few weeks here and there throughout the regular season. But I do think in the ACC, there's not really a lot of outstanding teams. So I think they have a chance of making it to the ACC championship game. But for me, I have them as the number 24th ranked team going into the season. Number 23 out of the SEC, I have Ole Miss, the Run Rebels, obviously losing a lot of talent to graduation, such as Jackson Dart, such as some of their receivers, some of their defensive tackles. Obviously, losing Dart is going to be tough. He's been their quarterback there for the past 3 seasons. But Lane Kiffin has done an outstanding job of taking Ole Miss from what were a few down years, I'd say, back up into, always being ranked in the top 25. Could have made the college football playoff last year if they didn't have a few stupid losses on their record. But yeah, I have them at number 23. Number 22 out of the Big Ten, I have the Indiana Hoosiers. Now, Indiana pretty much took the entire college football world by storm last season. Nobody expected them to be good, let alone make the college football playoff. Nobody really expected them to be above 500 in terms of their record last season. And then they shocked everybody. Kurt Cignetti had an outstanding year for them last year, and he's looking to do it again this year. They've got Alonzo Barnett III as their quarterback now. And so it's going to be an exciting year. It's going to be tough to match what they did last season, obviously with what I've said before. But I think this team is good enough to be in the preseason top 25. I don't think they'll make the playoff in back-to-back seasons, but it'd be really cool if they could. Number 21 out of the Big 12, I have the Texas Tech Red Raiders. This is a team that has pretty much out of nowhere all of a sudden gotten a lot of help with NIL funds and picking up major recruits, major transfers. I think the Big 12, there is really two teams, I think, maybe 3 that can really make a push for that playoff other than the Big 12 championship winner. And Texas Tech is one of them, so I have them at number 21. Number 20, another team that made the playoff last year out of the ACC, I have the SMU Mustangs, led by Kevin Jennings as their quarterback. Kind of disappointed in the playoff last season, especially with how they lost to Penn State. But I think, it was their transitional year into the ACC, and they did amazing. They're only going to get more comfortable, especially with Jennings returning as their quarterback. So yeah, I think the Mustangs are probably the second best team in the ACC behind a team we are yet to mention and we'll get to later. Number 19, I have the Oklahoma Sooners. It was not a good year in their transition to the SEC last year. Countless poor losses, I'd say. And I think Brent Venables, as their head coach, he came over from Clemson a few seasons ago, was the defensive coordinator there, and is now the head coach at Oklahoma. I think this is a really big season for him. I think another mediocre season for Oklahoma, and he will be gone. it's been tough to replace Lincoln Riley, and I just don't think he's done that. I think nobody can agree that he's done that well. And I think, with the big name that is the Oklahoma Sooners, traditionally, a blue blood of college football, they have to be competing and in the top 15 at all times, in my opinion. And I just think this year, they got John Mateer, the quarterback transfer out of Washington State. That's going to be a huge upgrade on Jackson Arnold, maybe even Michael Hawkins Jr. And so he's going to bring a lot of stability to that position and a lot more of comfortability for the offense with him as the quarterback. So for Oklahoma, I have them at number 19. But again, if they have a disappointing season, I think you should fire Brent Venables, look to move on, and find a better head coach. Number 18, I have the BYU Cougars out of the Big 12. They've lost their quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, to the transfer portal late due to some off-the-field problems, I'd say, or scandals with how BYU is as a school. But I think they really also surprised a lot of people with how they performed in the Big 12 last year. And they were looking to pretty much do the same. Now, obviously, they don't have their quarterback, but a lot of the team is back. And I think they're a good enough team to be in the preseason top 25. I think they could fall out a few weeks into the season with some trap losses or some trap games here and there. But for now, I have them at number 18. At number 17, this pains me to say, but I do have the Kansas State Wildcats. Avery Johnson is there. As much as I am a Kansas fan, I can't say he's a bad quarterback. He's mostly a running quarterback, very much dual threat. He can make throws, but on the ground, he's just so dangerous. Kleiman as the head coach, I think if he has a bad year, I think he may be on the hot seat as well. Kansas State has always been in this, bottom half of the top 25 throughout the past couple seasons, are not ranked. And in the Big 12, I really can't say there's a clear number one. There's one team that looks better than the rest, and we'll get to them later, but I can't say there is a definitive number one team in the Big 12. And I think this year, if you're a Kansas State fan or you are part of Kansas State, you have to try and claim that title as the best team in the Big 12. I don't think they will. I hope they don't, but there is a possibility. Number 16, I have the Tennessee Volunteers, the team out of the SEC. It was a topsy-turvy summer for them. Of course, they lost their star quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, to the transfer portal, kind of out of nowhere to UCLA. People think it's mostly because of money. He said it wasn't. I think it's pretty obvious it's because of money, because of more NIL money. The less we talk about NIL, the better, because it's just turning college sports into free agency in the summer with the transfer portal, and I hope that changes. But for now, Tennessee at number 16, I think under Josh Heupel, they've become a lot better, a lot more consistent. Obviously, last year we saw them make the college football playoff. Now they did lose to Ohio State rather convincingly. It wasn't a good performance, but they're good enough to be in my top 25 at number 16. Number 15, I have the Michigan Wolverines. And this year they have a quarterback 100% good enough to lead the program. He is a true freshman, but he is a 5-star and the number one player in the nation from this high school class, and that is Bryce Underwood. He originally committed to LSU, decommitted, now is with the Michigan Wolverines. Again, could be because of NIL money, who really knows, but he is an absolutely stellar talent, and I think they've got enough pieces on the defensive side to help games if Underwood needs a bit of a learning curve, or if it takes time to him to really get control of that transition from high school to college football. I think their defense is good enough to keep them in games, and I think there's enough weapons for Underwood to do damage with. Coming in at number 14, another surprise team of last year out of the Big Ten, I have the Illinois Fighting Illini. They had a really good start to the season last year, then picked up a few losses here and there, but they returned a lot of their players, including quarterback Luke Altmaier. They took down Kansas last year. They took down a lot of good schools last year, and I think with the majority of their important pieces returning, I think they're only going to get better. They're only going to get more comfortable with this newfound success. So for those reasons, I have them at number 14. Number 13, another SEC school, I have the Florida Gators. Obviously, Florida's at an all-time high after winning the college basketball national championship. In the football season, it wasn't a success last year, but they found success in the last few weeks when they fully made that switch to DJ Lagway as their quarterback. I think he's actually one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I think once they made that switch from Graham Mertz to Lagway, you can instantly see their offense really just took off. They've got good receiving weapons. They've got a good backfield. And I think, Billy Napier really needs a good season. I think that's exactly what he'll have with Florida. I have them preseason 13, but I can easily see them as a top 10 team, 4 or 5 weeks into the season, as long as they don't take some unnecessary losses and pick up the wins that they should. Number 12, this is the highest ranked Big 12 team, and that is the Arizona State Sun Devils. They represented the Big 12 in the college football playoff last year, mostly because of Cam Skattebo, how everyone loved him watching him last year, those last few weeks in the Big 12 championship, in the college football playoff first round when they lost to Texas. And now they do lose him, of course, to graduation, but their quarterback was Sam Leavitt last year, who was only a freshman, so he's back as a sophomore. Jordan Tyson, their number one receiver, definitely the number one receiver in the Big 12, and probably a top 5 receiver in the entire sport. I think they're going to continue on with their success and momentum of last season. Kenny Dillingham, he really, really wants to see this Arizona State program succeed, and I think as a head coach, you don't want anything more than that. And I just think Arizona State, like I said earlier, there isn't a clear number one Big 12 team, but on paper, they would be the number one. So for me, they're the best Big 12 team going into the season, and preseason, the 12th best team in the country. And now number 11, just missing out in the top 10, yet another SEC school, and that is the South Carolina Gamecocks. This was a team that really made a late push for the college football playoff last season. They beat Ole Miss. They had that really close loss to Alabama early in the season, but then they picked up momentum and continued to stack wins. And this was a really good team that there were legit arguments for them to make the playoff last year. I think it was probably fair that they didn't because they had just a few too many losses. But I think going into next season with Lenore Sellers as their quarterback, I can't remember his name, but their true freshman edge rusher was outstanding last year. He's only going to be better. They've got good weapons around Sellers, and I think this is a team that could really, really make a deep push for the college football playoff come December time. All right, starting the top 10. In the 10th spot out of the ACC, I have the Miami Hurricanes. Obviously, they were led by the number one overall pick, Cam Ward last year, who came second in the Heisman voting to Travis Hunter. He was an outstanding quarterback during his one season at Miami, obviously went number one overall. But they've replaced him with Carson Beck, the transfer out of Georgia. This one kind of came out of nowhere, why he left Georgia, why he chose Miami. There's rumors it's because his girlfriend goes to Miami, and now they're broken up. Who really knows? But I think he's actually becoming a bit underrated now, Carson Beck. He was actually quite good, in my opinion, at Georgia. He wasn't the best, he wasn't the greatest, but he was good enough to be the Georgia quarterback, and now he's at Miami, replacing Ward. They've obviously lost Xavier Estrepo, the wide receiver, to the draft, but they've got a great offensive line again. They've got some good weapons in the backfield. And like I said, there's probably only one team better than them in the ACC. We'll get to them later. I have them at number 10. Number 9, out of the SEC, I have the LSU Tigers. They are led by a potential Heisman hopeful, Garrett Nussmeier at the quarterback position. LSU has had fantastic quarterbacks in years past. You think of Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, 2 Heisman winners. And now I think they have Garrett Nussmeier, who was great in times last season. I think he's going to be only better this season. They've got good running backs like Casey Durham. They've got good weapons, and they've always got good defenders, good corners, good defensive backs. So LSU at number 9 for me. Number 8, I have the Georgia Bulldogs. This is actually a team I'm not that high on, but they have Kirby Smart. They have the brand. They have the players to warrant being in the top 10. But I actually don't think they're really going to be in a college football playoff contention spot throughout the season. I think with Gunnar Stockton as quarterback, I think he's actually a bit limited passing the ball wise with what type of throws he can make. And so I think Georgia, for the time being, will be in the top 10, and I have them at number 8. But I wouldn't be surprised, we're in November, and it's a Saturday, and they're playing Alabama or whoever they're playing, LSU, and they're getting thumped by 20-plus points. So Georgia at number 8, but I'm not high on them at all. Number 7, I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Of course, they made the national championship game last year, and after that first drive in that game, if you guys can remember, where they really took off all its clock, got a touchdown, Ohio State kind of just exploded, and then Notre Dame kind of made a comeback effort late in the game. It fell just short, but Marcus Freeman, I think, is the ultimate players coach. I think he gets everyone motivated on that team. It's going to be tough without Riley Leonard anymore as the quarterback, but they still have Jeremiah Love as the running back, probably a top 3 running back in the country. And we've seen in the past few years, especially this past season with Riley Leonard, they're a run-heavy offense. And when you have Jeremiah Love, you're going to be great when you're running the ball. So Notre Dame at number 7. Number 6, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is going to be year 2 for Kalen DeBoer after he replaced the GOAT Nick Saban. He doesn't have Jalen Milroe anymore. He's lost a few offensive weapons like Justice Haynes to Michigan, but he still has probably the second best, well, definitely the second best wide receiver, maybe even the third best just player overall in college football in Ryan Williams. You know, the true freshman last year was outstanding. It's just incredible to me to think there was actually somebody better than him last year, but there was, and we'll get on to him later. But Alabama, a perennial powerhouse. It'll be interesting to see who they go with at the quarterback position. Will it be Ty Simpson? Will it be somebody else? We'll have to wait and see. But for now, I have them at number 6. At number 5, I have the Oregon Ducks. Dan Lanning has turned this team into top 5 team throughout the year, every single season. Last year with Dilly and Gabriel, they were fantastic. They've obviously lost in the graduation, but they've got Dante Moore now, who spent the last season learning behind Gabriel. Now he's in charge of that offense. They still got good weapons around him. They obviously lost Tez Johnson to the draft, but they've got good wide receivers, good running backs, a great defense, and Dan Lanning is one of my favorite coaches in the sport, and I think he'll make them, into another college football playoff team for this upcoming season. Number 4, a lot of people have them at number 1, maybe number 2, but I have them at number 4, and that's the Texas Longhorns. All the talk, all the hype is around Arch Manning, and rightfully so. He's actually a really good player. It's not just because, he's related to Eli and Peyton Manning. He's really good, and he's the only Manning Manning family member we've seen who not only can hurt teams with his arms, but he can hurt teams with his athleticism, how he can run the ball, how he can be a true dual threat quarterback. Now, I think some of the expectations on him are really high, like, for example, the preseason Heisman betting favorite. I think that's crazy for somebody going into his first full season as a starter. But I do think he's actually very, very talented and very good. They've got good players around him, a great defense, and I think Texas may actually finally be back for good as a perennial powerhouse. Number 3, I have the Clemson Tigers. This is the ACC team I was talking about. They have, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the sport going into the season, and that's Cade Klubnik. He would be my pick for the Heisman. I think Dabo Swinney's had a few down years with Clemson. He also didn't want to utilize the transfer portal at all. Now he has a little bit, and I think, I can agree with him for not liking how the portal has turned out and what it's turning into, but if you don't want to use it for what's there, you're going to rapidly fall behind, and I think he noticed that and realized that, and now he's used to it a bit and built a very good team. Probably the ACC champion, in my opinion, and a definite college football playoff lock going into the season. Now, number 1 and number 2, these are both Big Ten schools. We'll go with number 2 first, and that is the Penn State Nittany Lions. I think this is the year James Franklin finally proves himself and proved that Penn State can beat Michigan, can beat Ohio State, can beat these big schools. You've got Nick Singleton in the backfield, a very good running back. Drew Aller, who some people may see as the Heisman winner, some people may see as the number 1 overall pick. We'll have to wait and see with him. They lost Tyler Warren to the draft. They're very versatile tight end who can block, run, catch, sometimes throw. But they've got such a good team around Drew Aller and Nick Singleton. And I think this year Penn State's going to actually, although there's high expectations, I think they're actually going to exceed them for a change rather than go below them. So that means in my number 1 position, I do have the defending national champions, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think if your team wins the national championship and the next season comes, they should always be the preseason number 1 school, whether that's basketball, football, NFL, NBA. I think it's hard to rank teams before we actually see them on the field. We can only go off of last season. And last season, Ohio State won the national championship. Of course, they've lost their quarterback, Will Howard, Their two running backs of Quinshawn Judkins, Travion Henderson, their wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, but they're probably going to go with Julian Sand as their quarterback, who I think is very good. Maybe has a better upside than Will Howard. But the key thing, you still have Caleb Downs as your safety, as your best defensive player, the best defensive player in the sport and the second best player in the sport. And then you still have Jeremiah Smith as your wide receiver. Probably, as a true freshman last year, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. I hear people who have been covering the sport forever, professionals, who say this is the best college prospect they've ever seen. So that makes me feel better about thinking that, because that's what I think. And he's only getting stronger, he's only getting faster, he's only getting bigger, according to himself. He's going to be a sophomore, he's going to be the best player in the sport, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick after his junior year. And when you still have Caleb Downs, you still have Jeremiah Smith, and you still have Ryan Day as your head coach, I think Ohio State is deservedly so the number 1 preseason team, in my opinion. So that's going to wrap up the Glue Guys 2025-2026 preseason college football top 25. Let me know what you guys agree with. Again, I have Ohio State as the number 1 team going into the season. Obviously, it's only a preseason ranking, so everything can change after week 1, but we'll just have to wait and see. If you guys enjoyed, please subscribe, like, follow, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.